Union president. So an update for today, we have 100 searchers that are out searching from our operation today. They are working out of Jacksonville, Brunswick, and Savannah. That's about 32 boats working out of those three ports. In addition, we have about 8 boats that are working out of Charleston, South Carolina, that involves about 50 searchers they're looking from Charleston kind of to the south. In all, we're covering about 5,000 square miles today in our search efforts, and that's 32 gridded sections that we've assigned each boat to get into. As we've been doing every day, our headquarters is blowing up with requests to how we can help, and I'll reiterate, jfrd.com and help find them. If you want to help, that's where you go. A lot of questions are coming forward about the family and family support. The two locals from Fairfax and from Jacksonville are supporting those family efforts. They literally have put their arms around both of those families and providing for every one of their needs. I want to thank the community again. Without the community support, this would not be happening. Us trying to find our two brothers, and their support is invaluable and very necessary. We got regional partners that are involved I need to thank as well. From the local area, regional law enforcement partners, regional fire department partners that are helping us search offshore. We have state assets. The state of Florida is providing assets to us as well, and then of course our federal assets that are being provided by the Coast Guard, the Navy, and Customs and Border Protection. Captain, again, I want to thank you for y'all can't understand the monumental effort that the Coast Guard is putting forward, leading this effort to find these two firefighters. And I want to bring up the captain now and let him brief what the Coast Guard is doing today. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief Powers. I want to start just by thanking again some of our partners, the United States Air Force, U.S. Navy, Customs and Border Protection, Air and Marine, and Office of Field Operations, as well as all the way up and down the coast from Brevard to Duval to St. John's, Jacksonville, as well as our partners from Fairfax County who are here as well. I even just talked to the FBI Special Agent in charge this morning. We've talked to the Marshal Service, and one of the benefits the Coast Guard has as a law enforcement entity, a first responder, a member of the military, is we have a lot of partners and a lot of friends, and we're talking to everybody up and down the coast, looking for ideas, equipment, and special teams that we can bring in to aid us in this search. We did not find anything yesterday afternoon or overnight. We are checking into a couple of debris fields and trying to relocate some areas where we've got some notification of debris, but we have not yet identified anything that would lead us to believe that we've got the right target. At this point, our search is becoming quite extended. As I mentioned yesterday, we're in a race against time. We really are. That is becoming even more acute as we move forward. I have an asset this afternoon that will be 120 to 200 miles off Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, on a further end of our search. And we continue to search south of that down to the Charleston and Savannah area. But the drift and the Gulf Stream that we've been talking about now for a couple of days is working against us. And we're still dealing with a current that's moving 4 to 6 knots northerly. Which means every time I put a 4-hour search asset out on scene, the water underneath them and everything in it has moved between 12 and 20 miles from the time they get there to the time they depart. And that really gives you an idea of the order of magnitude we're dealing with, where now some of our early search objects and some of the things that we were drifting from day one are reaching New England, and we're still looking in areas as far south, obviously, as Cape Canaveral. So this really has become a truly extensive and massive search. We are out there now. We have plans. We have planes that are in aircraft and cutters that are heading out there for this afternoon, and we're setting up plans into the evening. And with each one of these successive search operations, we continue to evaluate as we move forward as to whether there's still a likelihood of success with search operations. And for today, we're continuing along that avenue. So thank you.
Captain, how long do you think you will continue the search?
So that continues to be a session by session. So every time we send out our search round and we get those pilots and those crews back, we debrief, we learn if we've learned anything new. We do some follow-on investigation. If there's been debris or anything located, we get search assets out to that. We collect that data, and that feeds the next planning cycle for the next layer of searches. Right now, the last known object we found is approaching 2 days old, which is the fish bag. And again, because of that, that's allowing our drift area to continue to expand in almost every direction. So at this point, we're still engaged today, and then based on what we learn here throughout the evening, we'll start having to have discussions about whether we can still actively search or whether we need to accept another posture.
Can you talk about the debris fields, how many there are and where they are?
The challenge we're reaching with debris fields, and as I mentioned this yesterday, is there's a lot of trash in the ocean. So as we're finding things that may correlate, a lot of times our aircraft and our cutters are going back to pick up bags of trash, or we're picking up a styrofoam lid that may be 3 or 4 months old. We're finding things that have growth on it, for example. That's one of the challenges with any large area search. So every time we get any report of a field, we're coordinating our air assets and our surface assets to get to that area. And sometimes just relocating it can be a challenge, because you can see debris 1 minute, it can move in a different direction, it can sink, and that frustrates obviously the search and rescue assets out there. But that's the constant handoff that we're doing with our local partners, with our federal partners, with those people on the water and those people in the air. The communication is that tight, and as soon as we get a report, we try to get a surface asset onto whatever they may have been looking at. And up until now, with the exception of the bag, we've picked up a lot of different debris, but we haven't picked up anything that would correlate to this event.
With a lot of the civilian boats, they've been going 30 to 60 miles out. That's kind of what Chief's been asking for. How much searching is being done outside the stream, outside the ledge?
That's where most of our searching is, because of the incredible amount of effort that Chief and partners have put into that 30-60 mile range. I've been able to put most of our effort offshore. So my cutters, for example, are 65, 70, 80 miles offshore, and some of the searches now with aircraft are extending outwards, even up to around 200 miles offshore. And this is all based on some really sophisticated computer modeling that'll tell us where any likely particles will drift as they go north. The challenge with that now is these drifted areas are approaching 250 miles and longer of area, and that's what becomes the problem. Is at some point your statistical advantage from sending a dedicated asset versus just a standard patrol asset, they start to become the same.
When you say race against time, can you explain what we're racing against?
The challenge, there's many challenges, and one obviously is just any person's survivability on the water. I mean, that is one of the factors that we constantly evaluate. The second is that the Gulf Stream, it tends to not only move what you're searching forward, but it also spreads out the possible area of search. So part of the time that we race against is by a day after that, you start to reach a search area that could be 250,000 square miles. And at that point when you've reached that large of a search area, your opportunity to find something with a dedicated asset and your opportunity to find something with a patrol asset suddenly become the same statistically. So that's the race that we're in, is that the area is literally becoming so large, and that's why each individual clue becomes so important, because if we can't narrow back down, we're only in an expanding scenario right now, and it just becomes a incredibly large ocean.
Waking up this morning with that next 24 hours are going to be a critical point for you guys in this search. If by the end of today you don't find anything, what would be a turning point in the recovery of the rescue right now?
That's the conversations that we will have to start having based on the size of the search. And again, what it comes down to is the likelihood of success. So as a search area grows from 50,000 to 100,000 to 200,000 square miles, we simply have to have more information in order to send a dedicated flight or asset out to any given area. Our patrol assets in the Coast Guard, we always remain ready, relevant, and responsive. We always have aircraft. We've always got patrol craft underway between here and Maine on a daily basis. There are always Coast Guard assets on the water and in the air. The issue becomes, can you still send a dedicated asset? And if I do launch that asset, do I have a place to tell them to go? And as the drift area becomes astronomically large, my likelihood of telling them to go right or go left suddenly becomes the same.
How are you feeling today, Wednesday, entering our 6th day in this search?
We are still searching. We are still searching actively, and we still remain with our guarded optimism that today is a new day, But you know, I have to be honest that as we move forward, we're moving into a even more complex environment and an even larger environment, and it's a struggle for all of us. Every one of us, from Sector Jacksonville to Miami. I talked to my partners in as far north as Hampton Roads, North Carolina, Charleston. We're all feeling it. This is a big, spectacularly large and complex search, the most complicated I've seen in my career, and we're still out there searching today.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, guys.
Is it possible for us to speak to any of the union representatives?
You just heard from the Coast Guard and also JFRD giving an update on these two missing firefighters. They say that this is a massive search now that extends from South Florida all the way up to North Carolina. You remember that the last place that these two firefighters were known to be, they were supposed to go fishing off of out of Central Florida and from Port Canaveral. Now the search again involves dozens and dozens of agencies right now, and that includes the Army, that includes the Navy, and we do know that they have identified a debris field, and they're trying to see if they can connect anything that's been found there in the ocean to these two men. But they say that the Gulf Stream is working against those search crews right now, and First Alert meteorologist Corey Sima will explain exactly what that means and why the currents are working right now against those search teams. But less than an hour ago, the wife of one of the missing firefighters thanked the community for all of their help and their dedication.
I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I never doubted anybody out there that would help us. I know we have a strong family out there, but I really appreciate it. I've leaned on everybody that has been able to hold me up through some of this stuff. So I really appreciate you guys. I love you. Thank you.
Such a show of strength there. Action News Jack spoke with Natasha Walker yesterday. She spent hours in a plane with a pilot volunteering his time searching for her husband, Justin. And she says that she won't stop until he is found, Phil.
Action News Jax told you that Justin Walker and Brian McClooney were last seen leaving Port Canaveral on Friday. Saturday and Sunday, Coast Guard crews and JFRD spent all day on the water searching for those boaters. Monday was when they started asking for volunteers to help. And then on Tuesday, a search volunteer discovered McClooney's tackle bag about 50 miles off the coast of St. Augustine. We have team coverage from Mayport to St. Simons, Georgia for you this noon. We'll start with Action News Jack's Bridget Matter at Mayport. And Bridget, firefighters in Charleston, South Carolina are also helping with the search today.
There are hundreds of volunteers that are up and down the coast looking for these two men. Now, the Coast Guard, they did just say in that press conference that you watched, the Coast Guard representative that spoke said this is the most vast search that he has ever done in his career. I mean, they are talking about, you know, thousands of square miles that they are searching, and it's really becoming vast, and it's something that they are having to work against. Now, 24 hours has gone by since the Coast Guard said yesterday the next 24 hours are crucial. It is day 6 of searching, and thousands of square miles of waters have been searched up the East Coast. Today, dozens of boats, they're out there again in Customs Border Patrol. They're also up in the air again searching. In the 6 days of searching, the only significant clue crews have is that tackle bag that was found about 50 miles off shore of St. Augustine. Now, yesterday we also did show you that we searched with JFRD on their boat. We spoke to several volunteers before they went on their search for the day. Many remain optimistic.
We're going to find these guys, 100%. That's, I mean, bottom line, we got to find them.
Now, I spoke briefly with JFRD a little bit earlier today and asked about the families of these two. They say that they are in good spirits and they are hopeful and extremely grateful for everybody that is coming out here, showing their support and also searching for these men on their own time. We expect to have another briefing at some point today. They will search throughout the day, but the Coast Guard says tonight they will have to reevaluate and see what to do moving forward into tomorrow if nothing is found. For now, we're live in Mayport. Bridget Matter, CBS 47 Action News Jax.
And you heard in that news conference, more than 32 boats from Florida are in the water right now searching, and dozens of boats from Georgia are out in the Atlantic joining the efforts to find these 2 firefighters. Action News Jack's Beth Russo picks up our live team coverage right now from St. Simon's Island. Beth, there are 4 coastal areas right now where volunteers are headed out.
And within just the last 10 minutes, I spoke to a boat owner, as he was headed out to search. His boat was about this size. He tells me they're headed about 90 miles off the coast. So the really important thing is that they had 2 engines to make sure that they can make it all the way out there and all the way back. Management here at Morningstar Marina says it's one of at least 3 boats that are heading out to do grid searches today for Brian McClooney and Justin Walker. They tell me 2 of these boats left earlier this morning. Fire department leaders say that there are around 100 Georgia volunteers answering this call for help. They say 4 to 5 boats are heading out from each of these locations: Brunswick, St. Catharines, St. Simons, and Savannah. Action News Jack showed you live yesterday when the Coast Guard announced they're shifting their search for these 2 firefighters north towards Brunswick and Savannah. Volunteers tell me that they're more than willing to help out. They just want these 2 found quickly and safely. Now, as I mentioned, I did get to speak to boat owner David Lee as he was heading out to complete his grid search. He breaks down those grids and how these searches work. You're going to hear from him all new on Action News Jax at 5. We're live in St. Simons this afternoon. Beth Russo, CBS47, Action News Jax.
And we'll talk with First Alert meteorologist Corey Sim in just a moment about the conditions out there on the water. But Action News Jax has continuing coverage of the search for these 2 missing firefighters. You can see the photos from this week's searches and read more about what you would like to do. Maybe if you'd like to help out, we have that at actionnewsjax.com.
We have breaking news into the Action News Jax newsroom. Within the last 15 minutes, the Clay County Sheriff's Office says a, quote, sinkhole is forcing them to reroute traffic between Princeton and Notre Dame streets. Now, this is in the Keystone Heights area. The Sheriff's Office says that sinkhole is pretty big, 60 feet long. Action News Jax is working to learn how long it will take to reopen those roads. Still ahead, preparing for a holiday, how many people are expected to travel for Labor Day?
What to watch, brought to you by Ashley Home Store.
New at noon, record crowds are expected to travel for Labor Day. A trade group called Airlines for America predicts 17.5 million passengers will fly between August 28th through September 3rd. They're expecting more than 2 million passengers a day. This is a 4% increase compared to the same week last year.
Now, certified Jacksonville's most accurate weather forecast. Action News Jax First Alert Weather.
The coverage of the search for the firefighters. You heard the Gulf Stream talked about a lot in that press conference, and this is it right here. It's that very warm current of water that is just offshore. Now, this morning it measured 82 nautical miles from Jax Beach, and that movement at 4 miles per hour. Doesn't sound really fast, but whenever we drag this out over a few days, it makes a really big difference. 4 miles per hour over 6 days, it equates to almost 600 miles that an object or somebody could move in that current. We're always trying the tropics here in the First Alert Weather Center. One area that we are now watching, this is north and east of the Bahamas, expected to move northwest toward the state of Florida by the time we get to later this week and this weekend. And then you see the yellow shading here basically paralleling the east coast of the southeast United States. So it's an area we're going to watch. The odds of tropical development very low with it. Looks like all it's going to do, throw some extra moisture our way. It may rough up those seas a little bit, but that's something we're definitely going to watch over the next couple of days. And we've been watching Tropical Storm Chantal. It became a tropical storm yesterday, just the third named storm that we've had so far. It is going to track due east over the next day or two, and then kind of make this loop-de-loop, move to the south and then back to the north through the weekend, while weakening and losing its tropical storm status. That is going to have no impact on the United States and certainly northeast Florida. Here's our Riverside First Alert Skycam network. Really pretty shot of the towering cumulus clouds, or at least they're starting to get their act together as the sea breeze rolls inland. Before that sea breeze moves in, it's going to be hot. Temperatures in the low 90s, feeling like close to 100 degrees. Upper 80s by 5 p.m. Your evening commute looking mainly dry too, and then it stays warm into this evening as well. No rain on 5-Sweep First Alert Doppler HD, at least for right now. As I take you into this afternoon, you see a little bit of activity popping up by 3 p.m. A couple of isolated storms along the I-95 corridor as the sea breeze moves in. But as we get into this evening, here's 5 o'clock. You see that activity shifts west of I-95 near Highway 301, and then it just kind of goes away as we get into this evening and tonight. But the best opportunity for a shower or storm, it is going to be well inland today. And this relatively drier weather pattern stays with us tomorrow and on Friday. The moisture doesn't really look to increase until this weekend and then the start of next week. Now, your weekend, it's always in view here in the First Alert 7-day forecast. It's going to stay hot each afternoon, middle to lower 90s with a few thunderstorms. We're going to increase that storm coverage just a bit, but the best opportunity for moisture looks to be next Monday and Tuesday with afternoon temperatures in the upper 80s, slightly cooler. Remember, you can download the Action News Jax First Alert Weather app by going to our website right there, actionnewsjax.com.
Thank you, Corey. Some Florida Panthers feeling a bit down the way a state agency is trying to figure out why these animals are stumbling. Well, new at noon, some Florida panthers have been hit with a mysterious disorder that affects their ability to walk. You can see here the animals stumble as they try to walk along trails. Kind of strange. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Group says that these videos are from multiple areas throughout the state, not just one. They say some of the animals had neurological damage. FWC says it's testing for toxins now, infectious diseases, and nutritional deficiencies.
Really too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're keeping a close eye on the conditions out there in the ocean. Buoys measuring the wave heights anywhere from about 1 to 2 feet. And those winds now, they're actually southwesterly between about 5 and 10 miles per hour. There's some rain out there, but that is east of the Gulf Stream right now.
Bring those boaters home today, huh?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
More tonight at 5. YNR is next.